Everybody, this is a wonderful day here in Denver, Colorado, in the United States. We have very clear weather. It's cold, and I'm guessing that most of the people who are on this line don't have cold like we do, but we're starting into our winter cold season. So I'm all bundled up and feeling better with my jacket on. So welcome everybody to this workshop. We've just been talking with our presenter today, and I think you're in for a wonderful, wonderful opportunity today to get some new insights into teaching. So welcome everybody. And on our, in addition to our presenter today, of course, we have Dr. Jacob Frankham and Dr. Mike Poe. You'll see them at the top of your screen there. Dr. Mike is our Associate Director, and Dr. Jake is our Associate Executive. And we're just really pleased to have you all here today. As I said, we see a lot of familiar faces and names. So thank you for sticking with us. And we're really excited to be presenting to you today this workshop on the qualities of effective teachers. So Dr. Jake, we'll turn it over to you for now.
Yeah, I just have a few announcements. Thank you, Dr. Ray. And I too, like everyone here, I'm excited to hear from Mr. Tony Crawford, excited that his mom's here to listen in on it too, and all these wonderful people that we see every month. And many of you we're going to hopefully see in our travels next month. We plan on being in a couple different countries and possibly hosting some in-person workshops also. So welcome, everyone. Just a few different things that we wanted to announce. The first thing is we have a academic contest going on right now. We have several hundred entries. It's our Right Around the World contest, where students kindergarten through grade 12 can submit an essay about who's their favorite teacher and why. So please get onto our website and have your students sign up and have them submit their entries. They get certificates, and they also can get cash prizes for those that are the top winners. We also have a program called Me and My Community. Our big focus at Array Global is to help schools improve and communities improve, countries to improve. And one way that we can do that, all of us can do that, is providing service to our community. So this is a way that students, if they go out and do 20 hours of community service over the course of the year, they will get a certificate, and we have an awards ceremony that they can be part of online also. So we encourage you to get on and look at some of those different activities that you can get your students involved in. We also encourage you to get onto our website and look at our accreditation services. That's the main service that we provide for schools. We are partnered with some quality organizations. We are a member of the National Council for Private School Accreditation, which is an umbrella organization that approves accrediting bodies throughout the United States, and many of them work with international schools. We also provide dual accreditation services for Middle States Association and Western States Association of Schools and Colleges. And both of those are old regional accrediting bodies in the United States. So a school can go through the Array Global accreditation process and end up with two different accreditations. So we encourage you to look at our services, reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet with you, your team, your administration, and talk about how we can best serve your school. Another thing, at the end of the workshop, because there's always questions, is at the very end, when everything is over, we'll post a link in the chat, and that's where you fill out the survey so you can get your certificate. And we typically send out certificates. It's Tuesday night here, Wednesday for you. So you'll see your certificate in your email. You may need to check your spam. Sometimes when we send out mass emails, they can go into your spam. So we encourage you to get on and look at that. Lastly, I would encourage you to look at our Facebook page. We do have a closed Facebook group, the Array Global Educators Association Facebook group, where you can interact with educators throughout the world. You can ask questions to us. Dr. Mike is with us, and he does an excellent job of monitoring that and having some great dialogue. So we encourage you to get onto that. And also, Mr. Tony's going to be having a PowerPoint. You will get the link for that PowerPoint during the course of the workshop. So take notes and get ready to hold on to your seats because this is going to be an excellent workshop. Back to you, Dr. Ray.
Good. Thank you so much, Dr. Jake. And remind you, the main reason Array Global exists is to do accreditation for schools. And we have a lot of interest internationally outside the United States. So if your school is not already accredited, and one of the things that Dr. Jake mentioned is the possibility of dual accreditation with one of the two regionals. We actually have a school now that is going for 3 accreditations, both with us, with Western and with Middle States. So evidently they're finding real value in that. So that's if your school is not currently accredited by Array Global, we certainly encourage you to investigate us and see if you feel that there might be some interest there. Today, we're pleased to have Tony Crawford. We've known Tony for a long time now. In fact, Tony and I originally lived in the same state, Oregon. And if you're into football at all, you'll notice that the Oregon Ducks football team is now 6-0. They haven't lost a game yet. And that's American football. That's not soccer as we call it. But if you didn't have a chance to see them beat Purdue the other night, you missed a great game. But then I understand that. So Tony, I'm sure you saw the game, at least saw the results of the game. And it's really great to have Tony with us. He was with us last year for a workshop and was well received. Tony's actually the director now of the American City International School in Egypt. And he's been in Egypt for 6 years now, Tony, I think 5 years, 6 years. And
6 years.
6 years. And so, Tony, it's great to have you with us today. And as before, if you have questions or comments, and there will be an opportunity for you to do that, Dr. Mike, Dr. Jake, and I will be monitoring those. And if we feel that it will be helpful to Tony's presentation, we'll interject those questions or comments in there. So thank you, Tony, for being with us. I know it's evening for you. It's just after 12 o'clock noon for me on Saturday. And so we're a little bit earlier, but welcome to everybody.
Well, good evening from Cairo, Egypt, and good morning to those of you in the western part of the United States. And allow me to do a shameful greeting to my mother and my sister, I see, who are joining us with the webinar. They're each coming from Oregon, so have a little connection to my home state here. And thank you, Ray, for your kind introduction. I am going to jump right into our presentation tonight. I have a slideshow prepared, and let's get this queued up. So here we go. Our topic tonight is pursuing teaching excellence. And let's get, there we go, there's the full screen. And so want to subtitle this High Quality Teaching in the 21st Century. What are the skills and qualities that we would look for teachers in the field, at this point in time in our history? So every good lesson begins with stating objectives. And so I have half a dozen objectives here. I want you to know it's never my intention to simply read to you what's on the screen, but we'll do this together. We'll read together the objectives. We're going to reflect on what motivates us as teachers, as educators. We're going to recognize some of the challenges we face in the 21st century. We'll review a document called The Principles of Professional Practice. And I'll tell you a little bit about the background regarding this document. We'll share a few stories and a few quotes, things that I find are motivating. And then as we get towards the end, we're going to consider a top 10 list of how we identify great teachers. And then I'd like to say a few words about the Array Global Standards. So let's get going. Who dares to teach must never cease to learn. And might I say, this is why we're here, right? We're here to learn. And whatever point we are in our career, it's never too late to learn something new. The source of this quotation this was the inscription over the entrance to what was called Campus Elementary School, where I earned my degrees at Western Oregon University. We had an operating elementary school on campus, and it was where many of us did our first field work in a classroom or working directly with students in a school setting. And so I saw this the first time, and I have never forgotten this quote. It has motivated me throughout my 45 years in education. Who dares to teach must never cease to learn. I'd like all of you to think about just for a moment, if you were a student participating in the Array Global essay contest and you were going to write about your favorite teacher first, who was your favorite teacher? Just think for a moment. Who was he or she? Who was your favorite teacher? And why is this teacher your favorite teacher? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to comment in the chat box, just, a thought about why you would say this teacher was your favorite teacher. I'll pause for a moment so you can write your comments. I'll ask Dr. Jacob if he could read some of the comments, Dr. Ray, Dr. Mike as well. We could take a look at some of the comments that are being offered.
I think they're going to start coming here in a minute, Mr. Tony. And, when I think back, I had a lot of great teachers, but I think often we can think of the teacher that has had the biggest impact. I know for me, it was a gentleman named Mr. Shoemaker, and he was a social studies teacher, but it wasn't necessarily the topic that he taught that we enjoyed so much, because I have quite a few brothers and a sister, but we all loved him the same because he cared about us. He listened to us. He made learning fun. He made coming into his classroom enjoyable. And I think the other thing is that he had some extremely high standards. He did not make things just a party all the time. It was tough work. And so we had to stretch and learn and grow and develop. So I think that was, for me, one of the best things about it is he was able to help us not only have a good relationship, but also to require us to have such high expectations. Yeah, just really, really good memories.
When you ask that question,
really good thoughts.
I think about Mrs. Edwards, who was my 8th grade teacher. And at that time, there was grade 8 was the end of, then we went into high school. And I'll never forget, I went home that day and my mother, I was crying and crying and crying. And she asked me what was wrong. And I said, I don't know. She called the school. Did something happen to our son today? No. And it finally hit me. She made me feel important. And that's why she was my favorite teacher.
And as we're looking at the some of the comments, a lot of them are centered around the connection that the teachers made, and that they were approachable and that they were supportive. And it's developing those interpersonal relationships that are so often make it true about why we like our favorite teacher and so on. I know it's certainly the case for me as well.
As we reflect on those reasons why we cite someone as our favorite teacher, we find ourselves thinking about relationships, the way the teacher made us feel, the connection the teacher made with each of us. And perhaps this may be one of the reasons why we chose to move into teaching in the first place. I'd like to transition to this next question. Why did you become a teacher? Once again, I'd like to ask people just your thoughts in the chat box, and we'll look for some common themes among us. While you're writing, I will just tell you, I might be an exception to the rule. I've discovered a lot of people who tell me they found they wanted to be a teacher later in life after they had pursued perhaps another career interest. I knew as early as grade 5, I was a 5th grade student, that I was going to be a teacher. My teacher at that time, she was struggling to explain something in class. Coincidentally, it had to do with a map and a geography lesson. Later in life, I became a geography teacher. But what happened that fine day was she tried many times to explain something to my grade 5 class and couldn't seem to connect. So she asked us students, is there one of you who can perhaps explain this? I raised my hand, I made my explanation, and the students all went, oh, okay, now I get it. She turned to me and she says, you should be a teacher. I had my focus on being a teacher ever since that day. So what are some of the reasons why people became teachers? What do we have in the chat box?
One of the comments is by teaching, we teach ourselves. Nygaard sent that in, and that's exactly right. When you teach something, you learn way more than sometimes than you're actually teaching. You learn how to learn the material better.
Great.
I chuckle at that, Dr. Mike, because my first teaching assignment was teaching English, and I had to teach the subjunctive case, which doesn't mean anything to any of you, and I had no idea what it was. I learned really fast when I had to teach it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of us as we proceed, let's be mindful of, the inspiration we received in the past from others and we continue to receive presently, and the motivation within each of us, as we continue our presentation tonight. Let's just try to remember those 2 points, how we are motivated. I have a little video I'd like to show you, and I'm going to navigate to this video. Let's hear what this young man has to say.
Take a second and think about the greatest teacher you ever had. Okay, I bet that didn't take.
Sorry about that, folks. I was hoping to avoid the advertisements. Oh my gosh.
Didn't take long. What was it that made them great? Was it that she was a master of her subject area and knew everything there is to know about polynomials or photosynthesis? Or was it the fact that she could put those ideas and concepts into a language that you could understand? Was it because he had the answers to all of your questions? Or that he always answered your questions with harder questions in return and made you think? Was she great because she let you do whatever you wanted? Or did she teach you how to focus and stay on task and tell you to put your phone away or your 8-track player? Was he great because he didn't call your mom when you accidentally dropped the F-bomb in the middle of class? Or because he did call her when you wrote that poem that made everybody in the room tear up? Did she know exactly what to say whenever you had a problem? Or did she rarely say anything and just sat there and listened to your grief? Was he a great teacher because he was easy? Or did he make you work your ass off? Was she perfect? Or was it her imperfections that made her great? Or was it the fact that she let you in on her flaws and imperfections? Was he an easy grader? Or did he make you work and grind and sweat for every single A? Did she teach you to love writing, or numbers, or stories from history, or the intricacies of plant life? Did he or she teach you to love learning, and that you have a potential for greatness, and that kindness and courage matter more than money or success, and that it's okay to make a fool of yourself sometimes? And did they keep granola bars underneath their desks for days that you forgot to eat your breakfast? Or for days when your parents couldn't afford to buy it? Did you know without a shadow of a doubt that you were more than just a name on a roster, or a number on a test, or even just a student in a seat to your teacher? They let you know that you are a person, one who is deeply loved, and because of that, you remember them as great.
So many of these themes we hear in this little video clip, we find that we can express those ourselves in a variety of ways. What I want to do is I want to share with you, take a look at this screen as we see it. When I was preparing for the presentation tonight, I just thought I'd do a little research, see what I could find online. You know, what are professed as the qualities of a teacher in the 21st century? And, you know, you look at this list and maybe some of the things you start to see there, they look familiar to you. But when I look at this list, there's one word that comes to my mind. It's overwhelming. Oh my goodness. Who can possibly say, I'm going to be an expert in all of these things? And some people would just simply say, okay, I can't do it. So let's take this list and just set it aside. I found a similar list, by the way, 21st century educators required skills. And when you read through all of these, it says I have to be a technology expert in many, many, many things, some of which I have no clue how to do. Oh my goodness. Really? We have to be experts in technology in order to be a good teacher, a quality teacher in the 21st century? I have to admit, we need to know some technology skills. It's why we're here on this webinar tonight. So we can't forget that. But what I want to do is I want to go back in time and put some of this in context. I want to go back to the start of the century. And the thing I'm going to attempt to talk about here is a policy that was popular in American education called No Child Left Behind. This was generated by President Bush. And the last thing I want to do is turn this into a political discussion. So we're just not going to go there. But what I want to mention is this. President Bush announced to all Americans that their children would be taught by a highly qualified teacher. Okay, that's a great ambition. There were many good points in No Child Left Behind, but a highly qualified teacher in every classroom. First of all, how do we know a teacher is highly qualified? So what I want to do is I want to share with you a brief story of my own. What happened one fine day, I'm teaching in my classroom in Canby, Oregon. Principal comes to my classroom and he says, during your planned period, I need you to come join me in the office. Okay, so I go to meet him, and here was this team of, they described themselves as government representatives. And so I met with one of them. We went into a conference room, and I'm there with the principal. She says, so, Mr. Crawford, tell me, what do you teach? I said, well, I teach grade 7 world geography. She says, great. So you have a degree in geography? I told her, no, I do not. Turns out my degrees are in curriculum and instruction. My bachelor and master's degrees are in curriculum and instruction, but not geography. So she turns to the principal and she says, well, I think we're going to need to put a letter together to inform the parents of his students that the students are being taught by a teacher who is not highly qualified to teach the subject. The principal immediately started to laugh, because what this government representative did not know was that just 1 year before that, they flew me to Philadelphia to receive the National Geography Teacher of the Year Award presented by the National Council of Geography Educators. So how do we know a teacher is highly qualified? Is it by their degree, or is it by something else? The challenge was put forward, how do we define a highly qualified teacher? And this led to this document called the Principles of Professional Practice. A task force was put together. There were 15 people on the task force, and they met in Washington, D.C. And they accepted this challenge of how do we define a highly qualified teacher? And so I'm proud to tell you that I was one of the 15. So we met and we began our deliberation. When we go through this list of the principles of professional practice, there are 10 of them. You might think of this as a self-assessment checklist. As we read through each one, see what makes sense to you. Now, what I will say is this, frankly, these are written as policy statements. And the last thing I want this to do is to be a boring presentation of policy. So as we look at each one, let's talk for just a moment. Okay, a high quality teacher designs and facilitates instruction that incorporates the student's developmental level, skills, interests with content knowledge. What does this mean? Okay, first key word I'd like to focus on is facilitates. Teachers today are facilitators, not lecturers, not presenters. Okay, and you know what we're talking about when we talk about the varied developmental skills and levels of our students, we're talking simply differentiated instruction. And I'm going to predict that most of us are familiar with differentiated instruction. The next one here, the high quality teacher develops collaborative relationships, partners with colleagues, students, families, and communities focused on meaningful and deep learning. Once again, let's look for a few key words here. Collaborative. Collaboration is key to success, you know, with our colleagues, with other partners outside of our own classroom. And then when we talk about meaningful and deep learning, I'm immediately reminded of the higher thinking skills of Bloom's taxonomy, things that may be familiar to us. A high quality teacher provides leadership and advocacy for students, education and the education profession. And this reminds us to embrace the role of teacher leader. You know, remember that as a teacher, you are a leader. One of the things that Dr. Ray and Dr. Mike and Dr. Jacob were discussing here before our meeting tonight was the role of leadership. You know, even if you're not the leader of a school. And so I always like to find who are the natural leaders within a school. And sometimes, you know, it's not by title. It's simply the teacher who, when he or she speaks, everyone's listening. And then, you know, of course, this one is a bit of a no-brainer. High quality teacher demonstrates, you know, knowledge of content. Okay. As we continue, a high quality teacher participates in ongoing professional learning as an individual and within a professional learning community. So, you know, when we talk about this, we're talking about PLCs, and we're reminded that learning is ongoing. It never ends. It's lifelong learning. And then here we're reminded of the role of assessments, you know, that high quality teacher utilizes multiple and varied forms of assessment. And this is to inform instruction and to assess student learning. So we're reminded of formative assessment, summative assessment, you know, assessment for learning and assessment of learning. How are you doing with your checklist? Hopefully you're checking off many of these going, yes, yes, I do this, I do this. A high quality teacher establishes environments conducive to effective teaching and learning. A goal that we had at my school in Oregon was we wanted to make our school safe, secure, and welcome for everyone. And that was the way that we made sure our learning environment was at its best. A high quality teacher integrates cultural competence and an understanding of the diversity of students and communities. So now those of us who are teaching in international schools, okay, we have to be aware of this all the time with expat students and expat teachers on our staff. You know, so cultural competence, know where we are and knows who's among us. A high-quality teacher utilizes professional practices that recognize education as vital to strengthening our society and building respect for worth, dignity, and equality of every individual. I'm reminded that the teaching profession makes all other professions possible. And so, if it wasn't for us, we wouldn't have all of these other professions. And then finally, a high quality teacher strives to overcome the internal and external barriers that impact student learning. And so here again, I like to think of what you're referring to here as barriers as obstacles. Obstacles can be navigated. We can go over them, under them, around them. You know, barriers usually stop progress, but if we think of these as obstacles, then it's no different than just running through an obstacle. Now, I thank you for your patience with me reading through the 10 items in the the principles of professional practice. But when we tried to speak of this in layman's terms, here's what we discussed. He said, think of a high quality teacher as a three-legged stool. And we know that the stool has to have all three legs to stand. If one leg is shorter than the other two, it's not going to work. And if one of the legs is missing, the stool simply collapses. So the first leg of being a high quality teacher is content knowledge. You know, we said this one was the classic no-brainer. If a teacher is going to teach math, yeah, you probably should know something about math. So content knowledge was key. Second was the skill set of teaching. Can you plan lessons? Can you deliver effective instruction? Can you assess student learning? The things that come natural with being a teacher. Now, again, I didn't want to turn this into a political conversation, but I will say this. Go back to that lady who interviewed me, and this was the point that was being made by many politicians all across the United States at this time, that if a teacher has a degree and would demonstrate, you know, content knowledge and actually, you know, can deliver some lessons, then that teacher must be a highly qualified teacher. These are only two legs of the stool. Those of us on our team, we recognize these two things, but then we said, look, there's something else. There's something even more important. And we describe this as the teacher's disposition. Is the teacher capable of building the relationships necessary with his or her students? If the answer is no, the other two legs of the stool are irrelevant. They mean nothing. We said this leg is even more important than content knowledge and the skills of teaching. And you build a relationship, meaningful relationship with the students. So let's talk a little bit about relationship building and what I describe as the teacher-student relationship. It's essential. One of the things I did in my past is I was a mentor for student teachers. I think I had probably 30 or 40 student teachers during my teaching career. And one of the messages I always had to convey to these aspiring teachers is be friendly, but not the student's friend. You know, you're a professional and you need to be a professional teacher. And of course, okay, it's fine to be friendly with everyone. In fact, we should be friendly with everyone. But students will respect their teacher if they know that that teacher is performing and behaving like a true professional. And so one of the things that I get a little concerned with, and this is here later in my career, I discover that we find some administrators, and in my role as director of my school, I speak to our administrative staff about this very clearly. We should never ask students to evaluate or to rate their teachers. If you are doing this out in the field, I urge you, stop. don't do this. Why? It destroys the student-teacher relationship. The moment the student seems to think that they have the upper hand by being able to evaluate the teacher, then that, creates an impossible situation for the teacher to try to build a meaningful relationship with those students. I'm going to tell you just a brief moment in time I had earlier this school year. I had some high school students come to me and they said, Mr. Tony, we need this teacher removed. What? They seemed to think that their opinion was, the teacher should be fired and I should go ahead and fire the teacher because they felt this way. I reminded these students, I said, you each have a job. Your job is to be the best student you can be. That means you do your best in your class, whether you like the teacher or not. That's your job. My job is to work with my teachers and to, yes, evaluate their performance. And I will do my job. But it's not your job to evaluate the teachers. I will say this, as we talk about relationship building, we have heard this many times, those of us who are regulars here with the Array Global webinars. How many times have we heard Dr. Ray proclaim, no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship? So kudos to you, Dr. Ray.
We should put up a picture for that and everything, because that is something that we say over and over and over again. And I think that's key and foundational to teachers and educators, that we need to be aware of that relationship component. Yeah, that's good.
Thanks so much, Dr. Jake. So I want to just ask you to bear with me. I'm looking at the time as well. What I want to do is I was going to tell a few stories, and I'll be very, very brief. First is this boy named Travis. Travis was a grade 7 student in my class. He comes to my classroom one day, and I could just see by the look on his face, something was wrong. He just, his eyes were bloodshot. Something was not right. So I asked him to step out in the hallway with me, and I asked what's going on. And because I had built a relationship with him, he just opened right up. He says, my parents were fighting all last night. I think they're going to get a divorce. I didn't get any sleep. I'm really worried. And I looked at him and I said, come with me. And I took him to our office where we had a health room that had a couple of beds in it. And I took him to the health room and I said, why don't you go take a nap, get some sleep? And he says, really? I said, yeah. So he did. He went and he laid down and I turned off the light, told the folks there I'd come back and get him at the end of my class. Now I think about this. I could have prepared the most wonderful lesson that particular day. And Travis was not going to connect with that lesson. What he needed more than anything at that moment in time, rather than a wonderful lesson, was he needed sleep. And he eventually needed someone to hear what's going on in his life and to care about him. And all of that was provided to him. And I will tell you this, for the rest of the school year, anything I ever asked of Travis, yes, sir, Mr. Crawford, I will do that. So there was no question about this relationship I had with Travis. With Tony, Tony was a student of mine, and we shared the same name. That was fun. But he just kind of was tuned out the entire time. And so I saw Tony 5 years after I had him in class. And we had met, and he said, Mr. Crawford, can I talk to you? And I said, sure, how are you? I was polite with him. And he said, I want you to know something. I want you to know I turned everything around. I want you to know I started taking things seriously. And I'm even going to be on the honor roll this semester. And he said, and I even stopped smoking, which was something he was doing as early as school. And so I commended him and I said, that's great. I'm so glad to hear this. He says, but I wanted to tell you the reason I made some of these changes was because I thought of what you told me, that you believed in me, that you didn't give up on me. And he said, that stayed with me. And, you know, I think about this sometimes as educators, we never hear the results of our effort, maybe never at all, or maybe it's years later, you know, we finally, you know, hear something about one of our students being a success. So again, you know, I'm just reminded, you know, relationship building with our students. Andrea was a student teacher of mine, and she definitely was someone who was the most intellectual type person you could ever possibly meet. She had a degree in psychology, and then she decided she wanted to be a teacher. But Andrea was not cut out a teacher, and I will explain. My students were just, they were in pain during the sessions they had with Miss Andrea. They kept asking me, you know, could you please limit her time? And so I talked with Andrea and I said, okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to maybe use a little humor, you know, try to connect with your students. So she comes back to me the next day and she has this meticulous lesson plan all written out, 4 pages worth. Oh my gosh. Okay. And so she's walking me through the lesson plan and she gets to about 2/3 down the page on page 2. And she looks at me, she says, I thought this would be a good place to insert a joke. And it was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So we counseled her out of the teaching program. And I think she ended up being a university professor somewhere, which probably would suit her fine. The last one I want to mention is one here from Egypt, Noha. Noha was an English teacher who taught high school English. And remember what I said about students not evaluating their teachers? Here's what happened with Noha. She comes into the school and she's holding students to high standards. She's like the teacher we heard in the little video description earlier. And she's making students work like they had never worked before. Many of those students who didn't work so hard went to the principal and said, she needs to go. Well, the principal supported Noha. And in fact, by the end of the school year, every single one of those students were thanking her for making them work so hard and to help them develop their writing skills to the level that they had never imagined before. So again, you know, it's all about relationships here from different perspectives, from my perspective as a teacher, from a supervisor role, and likewise, story of a colleague of mine. I just want to comment about relationship building doesn't stop with students. We are also mindful of teacher to teacher, teacher to parents, and teacher to the community. And so relationship building is significant in each one of these areas. What I'd like to do now is let's hear from a few students. And no, I'm not contradicting myself. I always think there's room for student feedback, but not evaluation of teachers. Let's take a listen here.
In another town, or that my kids do. Okay, so this.
راح تكونون في هذا المكان مدة 10 أيام. النساء راح يكونون.
The problem is.
What I think makes a teacher is how kind they are and what they do. Like if they just teach you fun stuff, that's not learning. But if they teach you like math while doing fun stuff, that's learning.
Probably someone who lets you be a little more independent and not just like telling you, now read this book, you don't get a choice or something like that. I like to choose what I read.
A teacher who knows a lot about what she's learning or he's learning.
I think a good teacher is like they joke around a bit, but they also can get serious about
like homework and they don't always let you slide. They get you ready for the next grade.
What makes a good teacher is probably, first off, communication. I think that communication between a student and a teacher is probably the most important thing, because there's a lot of times where students fail is that they have a hard time talking to the teacher about what they need to know and if they need help. And teachers that are open to communicating, whether it be like through email or face-to-face, they always have time.
I think what makes a good teacher is serious, but not too serious.
What I really want from a teacher is just something that challenges me.
I think caring about the students really makes a difference, be it just simple things like being compatible with flexible timelines or extra tutoring or adapting your teaching to other students. It really makes a difference.
A good teacher, someone with a warm smile and a happy heart.
I love that, a warm smile and a happy heart. I will never forget this quote from a professor I had in my master's program. You are as you are perceived. This is Al Sheragino. He's from Portland, Oregon. And the reminder here is the feedback you hear from others, that's how they see you. Now, if the feedback is as you intend, then okay, no problem. You are as you are perceived. But if the feedback is something other than what you had intended or what you had hoped, okay, it's time to listen and it's time to take action. What changes do I need to make in my behavior so others see me as I intend? You know, when we listen to the students on the video clip, we see many of these points that are made. You know, here's what students remember about their teachers. You know, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're fair, you know, they accommodate, they're approachable, you know, all of these things. Notice they're not saying they're experts in technology. You know, there's nothing wrong with being an expert in technology, but I remember that previous slide. And as I said, oh my goodness. One item we might consider adding to that list is enthusiasm. This was from a teacher in Gladstone, Oregon. If you're not enthusiastic, then fake it. You need to be your best every time you're in front of the students. At your best, anytime you're asked to take on a task. And so let's add enthusiasm to our list of expectations. My school in Canby, Oregon, we used to use the term master teacher, and the challenge was for each of us to become a master teacher. And I look at this list here, and again, I like to think of this as a checklist. One of the things, though, is the very first one, connects with kids first, okay? And then the second one, teaches kids first and curriculum second. And so this reminds me of a former colleague of mine, Mike Zagava was his name. Whenever he was asked, he said in a social setting, you know, someone would say, oh, you're a teacher, so what do you teach? And they expect to hear, oh, I teach math, I teach English, I teach whatever. He reminded them, I teach children. I teach, in this example, 4th grade children. It's not teaching a subject, it's teaching children. And, you know, I love this quote, gestures, you know, show us, you know, where to look, but don't tell us what to see. In my own experience, my favorite question was, you know, when students would ask, what's the answer? I'd respond. There is one more video here, and this one is kind of a fun one. What I will say is I am old enough to remember the David Letterman show on television.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's tonight's top 10.
All right, so let's get into our top 10. And it goes like this. Oh,
Losing a loved one
I forgot
is
to turn off the
unbearable.
sound.
Losing a child in war is
There we go. Sorry about
simply
that. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, our top 10 characteristics of highly qualified teachers, just like David Letterman might present. We would always start at the back end. Number 10, ethical and professional behavior. Let's remember that what we're talking about is our responsibility as role models. Students look up to us, colleagues look up to us. We must always be reminded that we are role models. Number 9, collaboration and teamwork. Remember, we work in PLCs and we work with parents as partners. Okay, and so this is all part of being a highly qualified teacher. Again, maybe you're using this as a checklist and doing this as a self-assessment. Number 8, commitment to student success. Yes, as I talked about my story with Noha, holding students to high expectations and expecting them to achieve. All students can be successful. And, you know, we are reminded that, you know, as students experience this success, you know, I would always tell them, you know, regarding your ideas, you never know from where the next great idea will come. Perhaps it will come from one of you. And I would remind them, you don't have to be an adult to have a great idea. So high expectations, yes. You know, when we talk about innovation and creative thinking, what I would always challenge teachers to do is this: try many things, go ahead and be creative. And if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means you made a discovery. It didn't work. So what will you do to modify it and maybe try it again so that it's successful? Number 6, emotional intelligence. We have to be mindful always of the non-academic needs of our students. And of course, as we talked about, relationship building. Lifelong learning. We've talked about this already. You know, each one of us, we're committed to this. It's why we're here tonight. Strong communication skills, active listening is so important, you know, and it's the key to any relationship. Cultural competence, as I discussed earlier, you know, those of us in international settings, being mindful of where we are, know our audience, know our students, and know our colleagues. Okay, I concede. We should know something about technology, right? We all demonstrate that we were able to navigate to this webinar this evening. So, okay, yeah, we probably should know a little bit about the digital tools. And then finally, we must be prepared for new situations always. This last year, I was part of a conference here in Cairo, and I was a panelist up on stage with 5 of us. There were others representing technology and business, and I was the one educator. And the question came to me, what are we teaching students today to prepare them for their careers in 2030? And I said, here's the challenge that we face. We don't yet know what those careers are in 2030 because they haven't yet been invented. So our focus is building skills such as research, to analyze, to collaborate, to problem solve. If we can help our students to develop these skills and perfect these skills, they will be prepared for any challenge that they face. And likewise, the same for us. We will be prepared for any challenge we face. Want to just quickly support the Array global standards. There are 5 standards and 35 indicators within the 5 standards. And my encouragement to all of you is to get a little familiar with the Array global standards. And I think Dr. Jake and Dr. Ray and Dr. Mike can speak to these as well. but I just put some notes together here, how the standards provide framework and guidance for all of the things that we've discussed tonight about what makes a highly qualified teacher. As we said earlier, the teaching profession makes all of their professions possible. You know, I remind students and I remind parents when I meet with them that the role of school, the role of education is to not prepare students for the next quiz or the next exam. It's to improve the quality of their life. As we go forward, may we inspire, encourage, and motivate those students we encounter each and every day. Every lesson should have an exit ticket. And so when we started tonight, I asked you to reflect on your favorite teacher. And what I am reminded is we, all of us here, we have become their living legacies. So now consider your current students and perhaps even your colleagues, and they will become your legacy. What do you hope they will say about you? I invite you to put a comment in the chat box. And as you're writing, I do just want to simply say thank you for our session this evening. Here's my contact information if anybody wants to reach out to me. But if you don't have this, you can reach me through Ray Global. Reach out to Dr. Ray, Dr. Jacob. They know how to find me. So thank you for our session this evening. I'm going to stop sharing here. I've tried to be mindful of the time. I know I cut it a little close. I beg your forgiveness, but you know, notice we talk about what are the qualities we look for in a teacher in the 21st century. You didn't hear me ramble on and on and on about you need to know technology this and technology that. Some of these things are time honored. Building relationships with our students was as important when I was a student as it is today. And you know, this is the first thing. If we can build these relationships, then the rest will fall in place. I thank you for your attention this evening. My time, morning, or maybe some of you. I am prepared to respond to questions. Dr. Jake, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Tony. And also, I think what we'll do is Dr. Ray usually ends with his words of wisdom, and we always look forward to that. And then while everyone is filling out the survey that we will post in the chat, at that point, we could take some questions if you're okay with that, Dr. Ray.
Well, thank you, Tony. This has been an outstanding presentation today. You've been able to put together so much of what is important. I actually wanted to say one thing earlier, but I'll say it now. And we've said this before. Sometimes the most important thing you have to do in class today might not be your lesson plan.
Right.
Might not be. I think of the student where you took him to the health room and said, you need to take a nap, and what that did to that student. So we need to be aware of that. The most important thing you'd have to do today might not be your lesson plan. So let's remember that. My final challenge today is a statement that I found just recently that I think kind of summarizes everything that Tony has been trying to share with us today. And it's simply this, and I'll put it in the chat room. A good education can change anyone. A good teacher can change everything. A good education can change anyone. A good teacher can change everything.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ray. And again, thank you, Mr. Tony. I'm going to post in the chat the survey that you need to complete in its entirety, including the questions, the 3 different things that you learned. So take your time to fill that out. And if you do not receive the certificate on Wednesday evening, please reach out to us. Well, first check your spam and then reach out to us. So with that, we will turn the time over to anyone who has questions. You can either raise your hand or throw your question in the chat. But I echo what you say, Dr. Ray. That was excellent, Tony. I think often as educators, we need to be reminded of these things and the capacity and the importance of what we do and the relationship building that's so important. So yeah, I liked your top 10 list too. That's great. I remember Dave Letterman too. Yeah.
Yeah. For those who are not familiar with American television, David Letterman had a nightly television show, and he always had this humorous top 10 list. And so sometimes it was worth staying up late at night just to see what that top 10 list was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to hang on for just a few minutes. And again, if anyone has questions, is there anything that anyone? Oh, here we go. I think, I don't know. We're going to keep getting it wrong. Ferris.
Ferris.
Ferus. I got it. Yeah,
Ferus.
Ferus. I'm going to
Right.
write that
You
down
got it.
so I can remember.
Ferris.
Perfect. So, thank you very much for a scintillating performance. I have a quick comment, and then it's followed by a question. To sum up my a year-long VC teaching in China, like an Australian course, the best thing I learned was being a role model. I worked shoulder to shoulder with Australians, with Aussies, and that's what they taught me. A good teacher, a great teacher, has to be a great model, a role model for the students. And being a role model comes with the full package, with a complete package of all those good qualities that were mentioned in the chat room during this workshop. And my question is to Dr. Tony Crawford. You earlier mentioned about the mismatch, the misalliance between what we've been doing and whether down the lane in 2030 or 2040, they would resonate with what we have been teaching actually. So my question is, we've been teaching more like a recurring motif. We've been saying you have to do that, you have to do this, but are we really preparing the students for the future? You said that we are not sure if those things have been invented, but still, we are confidently teaching the students to be a professional, to be a critical thinker, to be an analyzer, to have a firm grip on changes on technology, on AI, on everything that comes with the latest high tech. But are we really preparing them? So what might be missing? What do you think?
Thank you. You make an excellent point because, when we think about the future and the unknown, what will become the next trend, for jobs and careers, something that we haven't even thought of yet. Okay, so then we just give up on teaching our students? Of course not. We want them to be as well prepared as we can possibly get them. There's always going to be the need for basics. Yes, you need to know the basics of language, math, science, how to navigate each of these academic traditions. But let's focus on skills. When we talk about higher thinking skills, having the ability to analyze and to evaluate and then to create new solutions to whatever problem might be presented, then those skills can be applied to any new situation a student may face. But I want to add one piece that I'm reminded of, that this was taught to me by the superintendent of my school district many, many years ago. And he was teaching a course that I was taking at the time. And it had to do with cooperative teaching strategies, how to effectively use cooperative groups in the classroom. And he pointed out that the research showed us that the reason people would be dismissed from their place of employment largely had nothing to do with their competence with whatever that field was. You know, they knew their stuff. They had content knowledge. It had to do with the inability to get along with the other employees. And so this reminds me of the significant importance of building collaboration skills, getting students to actually work together with each other and to successfully solve problems together. And so if they're able to do this, then they can find that sense of teamwork in whatever future employment opportunity they may have. So, you know, these are some of the skills that you know, come to my mind. And perhaps there are others, you know, here on our webinar, maybe they have additional skills that they would think, yes, don't forget this. I'd invite you to offer your comments or perhaps post a message in the chat. Thanks.
I just want to interject here also. I think sometimes we get overly concerned about the technical skills that people need to know for jobs. And we're not concerned enough about the personal skills. And Tony has gone through those very well today about the personal skills. I once talked with a person who was responsible for hiring people for his profession. And he said, I am not as concerned what they know about my business. I'm concerned about the kind of person they are and can they learn. Because we will teach them what they need to know about our business if they have basic skills. They've got to have this interpersonal relationship that Tony has explained so well today. They've got to have that. If they have that, they can learn the particular order. And I agree. There are going to be jobs 10 years from now we don't even know exist right now. But if we develop character in these people, as demonstrated by the teachers, they're going to be prepared for this.
Well, and part of the thing too is being able to take what we've learned in the past to adapt to the new situations. I got into technology not because I understood technology or was all that interested in it at the time, but I knew how to type. I knew how to touch type. I learned it in high school. And when my students brought a computer to me and they were working on some things and they were trying to type in some programming, and I asked them, what are you doing? And they're going, well, we're trying we wrote these programs out and now we need to type them in. And they're going like this. They're holding up the paper and they're doing this to type it in. I said, let me see this. And I set the paper up there and I started typing it in. And one of the kids looked at me and says, Mr. Poe, I didn't know you knew how to use computers. And I said, I don't know how to use computers. I know how to type. And so from there, the realization that really dealing with technology was understanding how to deal with a keyboard and how to work with that and not being afraid to do things was more important in terms of learning technology than anything else for me. And I learned early on, I was not a programmer. I'm a user. But I understand what I need to do, and I'm not afraid to do that, and that's very important.
Well, Dr. Ray, I think most everyone has posted their survey. I went and checked, and I think we're good to go if we're ready to sign
Great.
off. So, thank you.
Welcome everybody, and we'll look forward to next month and talk to you soon.
Thank you again, Mr. Tony. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.